Hello, I'm Gus Downing, publisher and editor of the D&D Daily, and this is the LP News Network. With us today is Richard Hollinger, Ph.D., Professor Emeritus, Sociology, Criminology, and Law, University of Florida, and Bob Moraca, Vice President, Loss Prevention, NRF. Richard is the director of the Security Research Project that focuses exclusively on retail loss prevention and security issues. Dr. Hollinger conducts the National Retail Security Survey in partnership with the NRF, which the retail industry uses to benchmark national shrinkage. His major focus has been on white-collar crime, but as organized retail crime is now affecting the industry, he's added this component to the survey over the past few years. Dr. Hollinger serves on the NRF's LP Council, and today's session is entitled The Shrink Story by the Numbers, 25 years and counting. In the NRF's Protect written description of the session, which Dr. Hollinger presented, states, Dr. Richard Hollinger, lead author of the National Retail Security Survey for the last 25 years, will be sharing the findings of the 2018 report. Are the industry shrink numbers shifting upwards? Do the LP executives expect staffing to increase? Here are the numbers and delve into the insights behind the data as Dr. Hollinger explores the industry trends. Gentlemen, thanks for being here today.
It's good to be here.
It's our pleasure.
So Richard, your study showed a decrease in shrink.
A slight decrease.
Slight.
Yeah.
2 billion.
Yeah, it translates into large amounts of dollars.
Yeah, exactly. 48.9 billion in 16, 46.8 billion in 17, and for a shrink of 1.44 to 1.33. Great numbers, but with all of the store closures, 10,000 stores the last couple of years, and the tight payroll budgets, and most of those stores that were closed are in underperforming units, which oftentimes has the highest shrink numbers. Right. And if you take all that data out of there, are we looking at an anomaly, or are we really looking at an improvement?
I wish I could answer that question definitively.
Right.
But it's got to have an effect. Since we've done the study since 1991, we've always worried that the best shrink numbers were the ones that were reported, and the shrink numbers that were high never got into the survey.
Yeah.
Those questionnaires somehow just didn't get filled out. But I think you're on the right track. There's obviously an effect because there are a lot of stores that aren't in business when we talked last. There are a lot of stores that have merged together to keep abreast, keep afloat. And so, the stores that and the chains that do the best are the ones that with the lowest shrink numbers. And so, and obviously we know that those are the proudest loss prevention directors in the industry, and they're the ones probably more likely to fill out the questionnaire. Right. I wish that I had the money to go around to each of these loss prevention directors and sit over their shoulders and watch them fill out the questionnaire. And because we kind of know which ones ought to be high and which ones ought to be low. And that way we would get a better response. We had 63 companies completely fill out the survey. About 80 companies sort of started and filled in a lot of the survey, but oftentimes some of those companies leave out the critical number, like the shrink number, so we can't really use those data.
Well, is that an increase in the participants, or is that a general number, average number?
It's hard to know what average is anymore, because the industry has in fact shrunken a little bit through merger and acquisitions and just bankruptcies, but we used to try. I remember, Bob, we were talking about getting this together and working with University of Florida and our NRF. Bob asked me, well, how many do we need? I said, well, we usually felt 100 was the number that we wanted to shoot for. This year, 63 isn't 100, but it's better than nothing. And so what we have is the numbers that we have to deal with.
Right.
So.
But let me add this, Gus. With the transition we've seen in the business world, it does represent about 98 brands. Like Gap, for instance. It's Gap, Old Navy, Banana Republic, any one of those could have their own. It's all under one umbrella now.
Right.
So transition in the business, we think we're still close to that 100. So that helps us out.
And it is slightly skewed to apparel stores and department stores. We do know, and some of that has to do with the fact that I have the best relationship with the people who sit with me on the LP Loss Prevention Committee, and those are the people that I pretty well know are going to fill out the questionnaire. At least if they don't, they'll feel guilty. They should feel guilty.
Had good impact.
Yes, right.
You know, can you provide us with an overview of some of the numbers from an ORC, background screening, external crimes, use of technology as a deterrent, and other LP metrics and trends? Can you give us a little bit of an overview?
Yeah, well, we're beginning to see an interesting trend. For many years, the data showed that loss prevention directors had lower budgets, and they were asked to do more with less. And this year, we're getting a little bit better results on that question, because loss prevention directors are saying their budgets aren't as low as they used to be, and they aren't decreasing as fast, and they're pretty much flat from last year. Then if you ask another question, which is sort of to the heart of that, how many people do you think you would need on your staff, to fully staff your executive group? Typically, they feel all understaffed. Now, maybe that's just a common denominator in industry. Everybody feels understaffed. Nobody feels ever overstaffed. I know when I was in faculty, we never had enough faculty. But it does show that there is this staffing issue, and particularly staffing who have knowledge about high technologies and who have the expertise to work with IT people and deal with these frauds and internet collapses and crashes and other types of activities that they never had to face before.
So that's really what they're looking for, is to add those types of executives into their organization?
Yes, and we asked a new question this year. I mean, we asked how many times, how often do the loss prevention directors meet with their IT staff? This was a question that we never really focused on very much, but due to the various types of internet frauds and collapses and embarrassments with the use of internet data being compromised, we asked that question. And the numbers, it's hard to know, whether these are good numbers or bad numbers, because it's the first time we've asked it, but the good news is that a lot of loss prevention directors meet on at least a quarterly basis.
Correct. 60+%.
About 60+%, quarterly percent, with their IT people, and so that means that, in the old days, if I can say, because I am older, that there are a lot of people in the loss prevention community that were computer phobic, didn't want to deal with data, didn't want to deal with computers, didn't want those issues. Now that's a required skill, and they're looking for people that they can work with that will help them talk to, how should we say, the nerd language, how to talk to the people.
They probably talk that way.
How to talk to the people who can manipulate the numbers and know how to interpret the numbers. And one of the good numbers that we see is that there are some technologies that are now being used more often than before. One of the things that we've seen in this year's survey is a higher use of remote internet IP monitoring of stores. Now, on the downside, some of the higher technology items that could be used to reduce shrinkage are either flat or being reduced, and that may possibly be due to budgetary issues.
Now, getting back to the staffing, I mean, being flat in growth. I mean, couldn't that be kind of as a result of all the years of cutting back, cutting back, cutting back? And then you add in the variable of what we see as increased violence in the retail space, you know, from active shooters to ORC and such. And you kind of have you know, we're flat, but we need more people.
Yeah.
I want to jump in there. I think you're right, Gus. I think flat like is the tourniquet's on. We're not reducing, because most years you're seeing that reduction. So flat is good, but we've also seen that, I think over 1/3 are increasing the budget. So I think we're seeing a little bit of a nice turnaround. Retailers are doing a little bit better. Consumer confidence is up, highest in 18 years. So I think I like to think we're at the end of a bubble. So we shall see. But everyone still does think, last year it was 6.9, so 7 people that they thought they would need more to keep up with retail crime. This year it went to 8.
Yeah.
So, you know, retailers, they still want more assets, they want more people, but you're right about they want analytical folks, they want some IT computer skills, investigative skills, but, you know, the persona that they're looking for is now changing.
Well, and that's like almost in every department in the retailer period in business.
Sure.
Is if you're looking for people, you're looking for technology people.
Sure.
Yeah.
Because virtually every aspect of retail is there.
One of the words that jumps out in the survey is analytical. You know, they need those analytical skills. I mean, if we were doing this interview 20 years ago, it would be, I need investigative people. I need people who can run fast across parking lots. You know, I need people who could, you know,
God forbid.
who could be, who would be retired law enforcement people. You know, who knew the law, knew how to arrest people and capture them. But you know, we know the liability risks of that now, and so you know, loss prevention has moved to a much more technological reliance and to get these kinds of catch these kinds of offenders, and that means the use of we're beginning to see exploration in the use of face identification software. We're seeing the use of when it's allowed by state law, and there is some legal issues there, the use of biometrics to catch particularly the ORC shoplifters, the ones that are doing it for a living and are making a good living at it.
Excellent. You know, after doing this 25 years,
27
years,
Yeah.
what's the message to the retailer that you want to send?
Well, I guess the message is to continue to work as hard as you possibly can, but I guess it's, when you say the retailer, I guess the message that I would like to have is a conversation with the C-level people, because those are the people who distribute the money and distribute the budgets. And we all know that in the early days, when the first NRF meeting that I went to, loss prevention was viewed as right next to maintenance and perhaps lawn care, and you know, it wasn't, you know, it wasn't really a high profile. And now we have loss prevention executives who are vice presidents, senior vice presidents, who are, you know, they're around the table where all those decisions are made. And so the message is, you know, keep that up. You know, don't go back, don't drift back into those days where this is just viewed as a law enforcement problem.
You know, it's what Dick said is real. I had a chance recently to talk to the chief financial counsel, chief financial officers, and one of my pitches to them was, think twice before you cut that LP budget. I know that you might think we're a cost center because they still have us in that realm, but every dollar that we avert a loss with is a profit dollar. It goes right to the bottom line. You know, we've already paid all the overhead for that dollar. So, you know, don't be foolish and short with your assets. You know, did they listen to me? Probably not. But I mean, it's a real argument, and you know, we're not a profit center, but our dollars go to the bottom line.
Yeah, it's something that can't be ignored.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, especially with active shooters and the cybersecurity and all of
All
that.
the risk,
that's
all the
happening.
enterprise
I mean,
risk. Yeah.
And
the
all
more
the-
connected we become, the more problems we have.
Right,
So-
and those problems are beginning to really affect the perception of the shopper. In other words, the active shooter problem. You know, is it safe to go to the mall? Is it safe to take my kids to the mall? Is it safe to give someone my credit card number? Is it, you know, I mean, these are things that, you know, weren't as high a priority in years past. Now we're talking about people's financial futures. We're talking about people's lives. You know, the threat of armed robberies, which grew a little bit for a while. Thankfully, this year the armed robbery number has dropped a bit. The amount of the robbery number, the average robbery number, is still around $10,000, but we don't see that climb in armed robbery that we were seeing. Maybe that is just a one-year aberration.
Well, we had the hurricanes in Houston, which shut it down for 3 months, the number one robbery capital of the United States.
Right.
Plus, we had Florida shut down, which is always in the top 5 for armed
correct.
robberies.
It might
out of the
be
surveys that we do.
It might be an aberration.
yeah.
So-
It might, and I hope not, but you know, when you go to the store, most people believe that that's a safe place, and we would like that to continue. That's the success story in retail, is that this will be a pleasant and safe shopping experience, and will be truly an experience, because I think that's what people really want.
That's very good.
I think that's why brick and mortar stores will continue to thrive. You know, people want to touch the merchandise. They want that experience. My wife says, you know, I asked her, I said, you go to the store and sometimes you come back with nothing. And I said, you know, didn't you have a good time? She said, oh, it was great. You know, I saw all these new items and I felt all this new merchandise. I tried on these items and I said, I can't understand that. She said, well, don't you go fishing? I said, yes. Do you catch fish all the time? No. Do you have a good time? Oh, yeah. You know, and she said,
Great analogy.
She said, don't you get it? You know, you don't have to catch the fish, you know, to have a good time. And so it's that shopping experience, I think, that, you know, is still going to be there. And it can't be replicated online.
And quite frankly, in being in my role for the last 30 years or so, especially in the journalism part the last 10, I mean, that shopper experience phrase, focus, concentration, wasn't there 20, 30 years ago. It was there, but it didn't drive the process.
That's true.
Now it drives everything a retailer's doing.
Right.
So there's that transition as well. But at any rate, so what's the role of NRF with the NRSS?
Well, you know what? Dick had mentioned it earlier. We partnered with Dick about 4 years ago now, and it is a true partnership. We get all of Dick's industry experience, so he helps us set everything up. Now, you know, Dick is fortunately retired, so he doesn't have all those. He just mentioned this, all those grad students working for him. So our NRF team comes in, and we've got some really great research people who research everything to do with retail. So we look at the survey every year. We add, we subtract. We kind of figure what's best for the community, and we add the council input. So Dick we call him the head of it because he's the expert, right? When he's the E.F. Hutton. You know, when Dick talks, we listen to understand. So it's been a great partnership working with Dick. I used to call it the Hollinger report. Before I worked for NRF, it was the Hollinger report. You know, everyone call it that. So Dick is synonymous with the professional numbers. It's a benchmark survey. It's the best in the industry. So we're going to continue the partnership as long as Dick wants to still have some fun.
Yeah, as you know, even though I'm, you know, technically a professor emeritus, you know, I draw a pension, not a salary, but you know, and I have some graduate students that are still in the system that are working their way through, because I didn't feel I could, you know, just leave them and cut them loose. But you're right. What Bob has just said is that there's a really tremendous research staff at NRF, and so they have taken over a good deal of the data collection effort. We're still using the survey that I originally designed and we built over the years. We're adding new questions. We're taking out some that perhaps need to be reworded and reworked. And it still also has the connection to the University of Florida. From the very, very beginning, there were vendors, there were companies, there were consultants, all of whom wanted to do an NRSS type survey, and it didn't work, mainly because the question was, isn't there a conflict of interest? Thinking this through, at that time in 1991 with Reed Hayes, who was also associated with the university and got his degree there, we thought, we were working with Bart Weitz at the business school, we thought, well, here's a neutral party. We have nothing, to gain if the numbers go up or the numbers go down. We're not selling a product. We do what universities do. We collect data and we interpret the data. And so I still think that connection to the University of Florida or to a major research university partnered with the premier retail organization is the best way to go.
Absolutely. Gentlemen, thanks for being here today. We appreciate it.
It's an honor, Gus. Thank you.
Yeah, good to see you again.
Good to see you, Dick. Well, that's it for this episode, ladies and gentlemen. And we hope you enjoyed it. So until next time, let's keep them all safe out there.